The moment you stop explaining yourself, something powerful begins to shift inside you. You stop begging to be understood, stop proving your worth to people who only hear what feeds their ego, and stop chasing someone who's already shown they don't care. That's the moment silence becomes your greatest weapon. See, most people mistake silence for weakness. They think if you're not responding, you're losing. But the truth is, silence isn't surrender, it's control. It's the decision to stop feeding chaos with your energy. When you pull back, when you stop reacting, everything changes. Suddenly, the people who took you for granted start to feel your absence. They used to think your presence was guaranteed, like air, always there, always available. But when you go quiet, that air becomes rare. They start to notice the space you used to fill, the calm you used to bring, the light they dimmed without realizing it. And here's what most don't understand: silence speaks volumes. It says, "I've said enough." It says, "My peace is more important than this conversation." It's not coldness, it's clarity. It's choosing to protect your energy instead of proving your point. The silence you hold becomes a mirror they can't look away from. It forces them to sit with the discomfort of losing something they thought they controlled. And you? You start to feel lighter. You stop explaining, stop defending, stop shrinking to fit someone else's comfort. You start realizing your worth never needed validation, it only needed space to breathe. That's when you find real power, not in being heard, but in knowing you don't need to speak to be understood. Because the loudest message you'll ever send is the one delivered in absolute silence. At first, your silence hits them like static, confusing, disorienting, unfamiliar. They're used to a pattern: they say something careless, you react; they pull away, you chase; they withdraw, you overthink. That cycle fed their ego and reassured them that no matter what, you'd always return. But when you don't, when your phone stays quiet and your energy stops reaching toward them, their mind starts spinning in circles. They check their phone, expecting a message that never comes. They scroll through your social media, replaying your last words, wondering if they pushed too far this time. That's when the confusion begins to grow into something heavier: unease. They start questioning themselves, not because they suddenly care, but because they've lost the control they thought they had over your emotions. They want to know why you stopped reacting, why the version of you who once explained everything in detail has disappeared behind a wall of calm silence. They'll convince themselves you're trying to make a point, that you'll break eventually, that the silence is temporary. But with each passing day, their certainty fades, and your absence starts echoing in the spaces they once filled with noise. That confusion they feel isn't punishment, it's reflection. It's them being forced to confront what they never noticed when you were still trying. Because silence, unlike words, doesn't offer comfort or explanation. It leaves them alone with the truth they tried to ignore: you were the one holding the connection together. Now they're left talking to an echo, trying to fill a void that can't be filled without your effort. And as they sit in that confusion, what they don't realize is that your silence isn't about them anymore, it's about you reclaiming your peace. Some people never truly valued you, they valued the comfort of your effort. They were drawn not to your presence, but to the reassurance that you would always be there, texting first, fixing things, showing up when they didn't. They didn't love your energy for what it was, they loved how it made them feel important. They relied on your consistency to feed their ego, and your kindness became something they took for granted. But the moment you stop pouring that energy into them, they start to panic. Suddenly, the person who always reached out has gone quiet, and that silence feels like a void they can't fill. They realize it wasn't just attention they lost, it was validation. You were the mirror that made them feel whole, the anchor that kept their insecurity from drifting into emptiness. And now that mirror is gone. That anchor has lifted. They start to feel the unease of their own reflection staring back. It's not cruelty, it's balance being restored. Because you were never meant to be someone's emotional safety net. You were meant to stand beside someone, not beneath them. Your absence teaches them something your words never could, that your effort was their comfort, and your consistency was their control. When that's gone, they're left to face the truth: they never appreciated you, they appreciated access to you. But what they call distance is really just boundaries. What they call cold is you finally protecting your peace. The realization hits hard because they see that your silence didn't come from spite, it came from self-respect. And deep down, they understand they didn't lose you by accident, they lost you through entitlement. They took your loyalty for granted until your absence made them realize it was rare. There comes a moment when something inside you shifts, and peace starts to sound louder than attention ever did. You stop checking your phone for their name, stop waiting for a reply that never carried meaning in the first place. You wake up one morning and realize you don't care if they watch your story, if they talk about you, or if they pretend they've moved on. Because for the first time, you're not performing for anyone's validation. You start existing without needing to be seen, and that calmness feels like freedom. The peace that once seemed boring now feels like the most beautiful sound in the world. You walk into rooms differently, no longer seeking eyes to prove your worth. You speak less, but your presence feels stronger. You smile more, not because everything's perfect, but because you're no longer pretending it has to be. That calm energy, that quiet glow, that's power. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's steady, grounded, untouchable. The version of you that once begged to be heard finally realizes that silence doesn't mean you've lost, it means you've risen above needing to win. You start to see how much energy you wasted trying to convince others to value you, when all along, you just needed to value yourself. The approval you chased becomes irrelevant. The closure you waited for no longer matters. You no longer crave attention, you crave alignment. That shift changes everything. You stop being addicted to proving your worth to people who could never see it, and start living like someone who knows it. That's when you start glowing, not for them, but for yourself. Peace becomes your new language, and your calm presence says everything words never could. When you finally detach, your silence becomes more than distance, it becomes a mirror. It reflects everything they once ignored back at them, and for the first time, they have to face themselves without the comfort of your understanding. All the confusion, the overthinking, the insecurity you once carried starts shifting onto their shoulders. They begin to feel what you felt, the unanswered questions, the quiet wondering, the ache of trying to matter to someone who only noticed you when you pulled away. Your silence holds a power no argument ever could. It doesn't shout, it doesn't explain, it simply exposes. They start remembering every moment when you tried to talk, every time you reached out, every time they dismissed your feelings as too much. Now those memories sting because they realize you weren't dramatic, you were trying. And now that you've stopped, they feel the emptiness of a space they thought would always be filled by your effort. The silence forces them to hear what words never could, the sound of their own neglect. But here's the truth, your silence isn't revenge. It's self-respect. You're not trying to teach anyone a lesson, you're simply refusing to participate in your own pain. You no longer explain your worth, you embody it. Your withdrawal isn't punishment, it's protection. You've learned that some people only understand the value of peace once they've lost the person who brought it. And while they wrestle with the discomfort of their own reflection, you're finally free. Because silence doesn't just expose others, it heals you. It reminds you that not everyone deserves access to your energy, and sometimes the best way to be heard is to stop speaking and let the quiet reveal the truth on its own. Detachment is often misunderstood. Many think it means you stopped caring, that your heart has gone cold, or that you no longer feel. But true detachment is clarity, it's seeing situations and people for what they are, not what you wish them to be. It's understanding that chasing someone who won't meet you halfway is a betrayal of yourself, a slow erosion of your own peace. You're not heartless when you let go, you're conscious. You're choosing yourself over the comfort of their inconsistency, over the illusion of their care. When you detach, you begin to protect your energy the same way you once protected those who didn't deserve it. You stop pouring into people who never returned the same effort. You stop compromising your standards, your time, your peace, for the sake of a connection that has always been one-sided. And in that space of detachment, something extraordinary happens, you start to heal. Every moment spent not explaining yourself, not chasing attention, is a small reclaiming of your life. Every second of quiet becomes a statement, you will not sacrifice your worth for someone who cannot see it. This is the point where emotional maturity emerges. You no longer fight for validation from those who consistently fail to give it. You learn that love isn't about sacrifice without reciprocity, and effort isn't about proving your value, it's about sharing it with those who are willing to meet you halfway. You begin to feel lighter, freer, more present in your own life. You recognize that letting go isn't loss, it's a necessary step toward growth, toward peace, and toward living a life aligned with your own energy. Detachment, in its truest form, is not withdrawal, it is awakening. It is choosing clarity over chaos, freedom over fear, and yourself over anyone who never intended to value you. Eventually, after weeks or months of silence, you may notice an unexpected shift. They reach out. A simple hey, a random memory, a story reply that seems harmless enough. On the surface, it might look like they've changed, like they finally understand what they lost. But the truth is far subtler. They aren't reaching out to grow, to apologize, or to reconnect in a meaningful way. They're testing the waters, checking to see if you're still emotionally available. They want to know if the person they once ignored or took for granted is still the same person who will drop everything for them. This is where your detachment is tested. It's tempting to respond, to justify yourself, to see if the dynamic can go back to normal. But responding too quickly or with the wrong energy risks undoing all the progress you've made. Attention is not effort, and words without action are empty. This is the critical moment where self-respect and clarity must take the lead. You have to recognize that their curiosity, their sudden reach, is not proof of transformation, it's a symptom of discomfort, a reaction to the space your silence has created in their life. By staying calm and holding your silence, you assert control over your own energy. You show that your peace is non-negotiable, that your boundaries are firm. You are not rejecting them out of spite, you are choosing yourself. This is the real test of emotional strength, to resist the temptation to re-engage in old cycles of imbalance. Every time you maintain that boundary, you reinforce your worth, your clarity, and your independence. Silence here is not absence, it is protection, it is wisdom, it is a demonstration that you have grown beyond the need for their validation. You are finally proving that your peace cannot be bargained for, it can only be earned. Once you reach true peace, something remarkable happens. Indifference begins to feel like freedom. You no longer hope for messages that never come, no longer imagine scenarios that will never exist, and no longer create tension in your mind over someone who has shown they will never prioritize you. Their actions, their words, even their attempts to reconnect, no longer carry the weight they once did. You stop seeking validation from outside sources because you've found it within yourself. That's the real power, the quiet, unshakable calm that comes from knowing your worth isn't determined by anyone else's attention or approval. Indifference isn't emptiness, and it isn't detachment in the cold sense. It's a conscious decision to reclaim your emotional energy. It's a refusal to be pulled into cycles of need and disappointment that used to dominate your days. You stop worrying about whether they noticed your absence, stop planning reactions to their movements, and stop allowing someone else's inconsistency to dictate your happiness. Instead, your focus shifts inward. You nurture your own growth, your own well-being, your own purpose. You invest in your body, your mind, and your goals in ways that were impossible when your energy was tied to someone else's whims. As your energy returns to you, everything changes. You move with purpose, you create with clarity, and you start attracting the right kinds of connections without even trying. Your calm presence becomes magnetic, drawing toward you what is aligned with your peace rather than what disrupts it. In that space, you realize that the version of yourself they ignored, the one who valued consistency, respect, and honesty, is now the version they can no longer reach. That realization isn't about revenge, it's about evolution. Your silence, your indifference, and your inner focus have transformed you into someone untouchable, untethered, and undeniably powerful. When you reach the final stage of this journey, you realize that walking away was never about revenge, it was about rebirth. You no longer move on out of pain or frustration, but you move up with purpose. Every moment of silence, every boundary held, every ounce of energy reclaimed, has built you into someone stronger, calmer, and more self-aware. You understand now that you were never too much for anyone, it was never about you being flawed or unworthy. The people who couldn't recognize your value simply weren't ready to receive it. Your presence was peace disguised as effort, stability disguised as love, and some people are never able to see calm energy until it's gone. You begin to see that your need for validation, your constant efforts to prove your worth, were only ever masking a deeper truth: your life and energy are meant to be respected, not negotiated for. And in detaching, in stepping away, you've finally honored that truth. You stop chasing chaos and start cultivating alignment. You stop seeking approval from those who could never give it, and instead, you invest in your growth, your health, and your peace. You become magnetic, not because you demand attention, but because your energy now draws toward you the right kind of people and experiences. In this state, you recognize that closure doesn't come from them, it comes from within you. You've moved past needing explanations, apologies, or understanding. You've moved past trying to fix what was never yours to fix. And in this movement, you become whole. You've regained the version of yourself that existed before anyone else's neglect ever made you doubt your worth. Walking away without a word becomes the loudest statement of all. Your peace was never theirs to disturb, and your growth was never theirs to witness. It is, above all, your victory, your revolution, your freedom.